equals freedom podcast on WOBL. And now, here's your host, Rick Rucker.
That's right, folks. I am officially back in the building from Arizona. It was very hot out there. I was on like a 20-day run of just being in extra hot weather, and coming home to Cleveland just was such a blessing. But let me read my normal nerd legal doc here. The primary purpose of this radio show is to inform, entertain, and educate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented during the radio show do not constitute legal or other professional advice, opinions, or endorsement of any kind. Equity Capital Mortgage Group is a division of Gold Star Mortgage Financial Group Corporation, NMLS 3446, equal housing lender, Gold Star corporate address, 100 Phoenix Drive, Suite 300, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48108. Okay. All through that. Now, I promise to not talk about the Browns and Nick Chubb too much. It's been such a long
touch on it, though.
I know.
We're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about it. So, for those that don't know, I actually started. I would say I kind of started my mortgage company around the same time that Steve really started like his career in real estate. And we were at my good friend Adam and Travis local. It was they do a monthly mixer. We were at their event, and this kid walks in. He's got a book bag on. He's got all the flash. He's got like a Deion Sanders-esque vibe. And I'm like, who is this kid? Like, and then I start talking. I was like, this kid's actually a G. He's one of the smartest kids that I've. I say kid respectfully because we're not that far in age difference, but. He starts talking. I was like, he really knows what he's talking about. So I start doing the normal 1-2. I'm an Irish guy, right? I got a guy for that. So like everybody's coming up to me like about real estate deals and stuff like that. And I was like, you want to talk to that guy? So Steve Todd Morris, the man, the legend, Bulletproof Cartel in the building. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick and let the folks know, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I remember that day pretty good. And I don't take kid as an insult. I had to be like 24, 25, and
yeah, he was pretty young.
I'm still a kid, so.
Like you act like a kid, or you're still
both.
Yeah. We got some stories, don't worry.
I can't wait to hear them.
Act like it, and I still feel like it.
We cheated death a lot together.
I have a kid now, so I feel like it's starting to wean its way out. You got to have some sort of responsibility and changes. But yeah, I remember that day, and those meetups they did. They were different than what everyone else was doing then, because they actually actively allowed you to sell your deals and pitch them at the event. So that was great. Yeah,
Local was probably the first that did that, and then Isaac started his at Lakeside with his former partners, and then he kind of stopped doing it. Local kept doing it, and then obviously Investor Source kind of came out of those two, emerging of the two, really.
Yeah, it's crazy. The further you get down the road, and you're in the industry so long, you see a lot of stuff get put back together with similar people that cross paths 8-9 years before that. So we call that putting Humpty Dumpty back together when it kind of makes sense. So.
We are Humpty Dumpty. So, Steve, you grew up. How about you tell the folks exactly where you grew up at, your background. Just take them through your life prior to real estate and what that looked like.
Yep. People ask a lot of times, because I live in West Side Cleveland, born and raised, and I always say yes because it's easier to explain than what I'm about to say. But my parents were Fairview Park, born and raised, and then my dad and mom live one street from where they grew up still, but they took a little hiatus and moved to Columbus. My dad got a job with the Limited. Okay. And I think their headquarters down there. So yeah, I basically split time between Cleveland and Columbus, which was cool because they are so similar, but they're different. So you get to see both sides of it. So.
Yeah, very similar.
Yep, and then from there, went from a Columbus-based high school, Delaware, Ohio, Buckeye Valley, up to Tiffin, played soccer there, went to Bowling Green, played club soccer there, got an MBA in finance, and then found my way back to Westlake, Ohio.
Just MBA in finance, no big deal.
Right. Wow.
Well, I think I got it. I was either really close or who knows. It was kind of blurry at the end, but it was a lot of fun. Bowling Green's a great town to learn and party at. So
yeah, it's a MAC school. I mean, I'm a Kent Stater, so we like to party at Kent as well, and BGSU and Toledo are all really good schools, and good old Ohio. But so you grew up originally exactly where in Southern Ohio?
So my parents were Fairview Park, and then they bounced around the west side. They've been in Fairview Park, Rocky River when I was growing up, and then they moved back to Westlake when I was in college. But Delaware, Ohio is, I think, one of the biggest counties in Ohio, one of the fastest growing counties in Ohio. And they got, everything in between. They got a couple towns that went to my high school, Ashley, Ohio. They got one stoplight, the fake cop car to slow people down. And then they got, like I said, the CEO of Limited and $20 million houses. So Delaware, Ohio, and Powell, Ohio, it's just like a big mixing pot of a suburb. But it's a cool place to grow up,
They have some nice homes over there.
Yeah.
Very...
They did, yeah. Some really big industrial pieces in Columbus, and that obviously draws some big money. And then you had the other side where you could, do, cow tipping, and we had, drive your tractor to school day. So I got to see a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So the connective tissue between Steve and I often joke that I'm truly a hillbilly, because Twinsburg, Ohio, that's what we did. We went four-wheelings. We went to this place called the Pit. We had bonfires. We swam in creeks. Some of that creek was probably sewage water after we found out.
My God.
It was there was this place. It was this supermarket called Massara's, and there was anytime it rained, it flooded, and we would all go swimming back there. But it was basically probably sewage draining or whatever. So
you're making me happy to be from Parma right now.
Yeah,
that doesn't ever happen.
So I think one of the things that drew me really to Steve was just dude, we're just kind of hillbilly-esque, but we went on to college, blah blah blah. But we come from meager beginnings, you know what I'm saying? And I think the biggest thing that we often hear in real estate is oh, you come from this or you come from that. But I think really when our group collectively burst onto the scene, it was me, Steve, and then Anoop, and then Mitch, and then Steph, and then it just kept expanding from there. We were just the antithesis, I think, of what everybody felt real estate people were supposed to look like or how to act. They call us the fast money group or whatever. But when you got into real estate, how did you even what even got you there out of college?
Yeah, so like you said, I don't come from anything crazy rough. I don't spill that image that I was ever poor. My parents did a great job of providing everything we could ever need, but we also weren't rich.
Yeah, yeah. Twinsburg was like that.
Yeah, so I had a great upbringing, but I always wanted more, which is probably one of my fatal flaws. Is sometimes it's hard to rein in what deal and what you should be looking at, and do you do the safe one or do you keep pressing the envelope? But coming out of real estate, I did have some really good connections that were not coming from money, but I had some family that were already established that they did the more let you learn through it, not give you a big bag to start with, but you could rent their places and you could help them do open houses and stuff like that. So I came out of college just trying to use that as, the door's open, and if you hustle, you're going to be able to kind of push the envelope a little faster. So
yeah.
So you got that real life experience then.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great, and one of the guys that helped me a lot was my cousin Kyle. Kyle Lawrence had been in it for a while. So like I said, just seeing his finished flips and his finished open houses and even just hosting them, it just gives you an idea all right, this is where I want to go. So anytime you see something that's easier to do than, just coming in cold.
Yeah. What year was that you started doing that?
Good question. 2013, 14.
Wow.
Yep.
And that you were, what, 24 back then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So take us through your first few years in real estate, because you had a pretty progressively, it kind of took off very rapidly. What do you, how did you do that, and what do you attest that to?
Yeah, the first year, actually, I thought, for me, again, sometimes I probably, judge myself too much. I thought the first year was slow, just trying to get my footing, and I was a big believer in if I learn it first, the money will come. So I wasn't pushing the envelope on actually doing the deals. I was just trying to kind of be around the deals and learn as much as possible. So the first year was, rough. I think I made $14,000. So I was,
You told me that.
yeah, well below the poverty line, but I was living with my mom and dad, and I wasn't spending much, so it worked. And then I think the next year I made 60, and it always kept going up and up and up. So that was a long time ago, and we've been blessed to do pretty well in the last couple of years. Don't need to list those numbers on live radio, but it's always kind of trended up. And
I mean, we might get more followers, and you can feel free.
Yeah, no. I don't want the IRS calling me tomorrow.
All right, never mind.
But
that's like the second time we've had an IRS conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get fragged.
I know, real estate people. What's wrong with them?
But yeah,
everything's legal. We need to start doing it.
Yeah, everything's legal.
Above board.
But yeah, I mean, you don't need them to dig into legal or not legal. But yeah, it was just, the first year was, again, rough, but I was just trying to figure out, obviously if someone's able to pay you X amount to lease their place, and they don't have to do the work, but then they're able to cash flow it for a year. You're always kind of, I feel like when you're getting underpaid, and it's not like the people were underpaying me, and we'll get into that probably later, but the wholesale market and the investor market, you don't have the state or an agency telling you, hey, we think you're worth 3%, or we think you're worth $3,000 a transaction, or 1 month of a rent check. You kind of set your own paycheck. So the first year I was just trying to understand, am I on the right or wrong side of the coin, and then just jump over.
Right. So you were like a licensed agent at first.
I was, and I kept that probably all the way up to like 2019, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Kept your license. And then, so you switched into the wholesaling market, obviously, and we've discussed that on the show before, but take folks through like what the difference is like in that realm, because you kind of touched on it, but like what's the difference in that realm versus like being a normal realtor?
Yeah, so there's some like big names. I don't know if some people listening have either been on the show or seen their stuff online. Like Darren Mancuso is a great flipper, and my cousin Kyle Lawrence is an unbelievable flipper, and I knew a lot of other people when I was getting started. And if you could find them a property, they'd be happy to give you like 3, 5, 10, depending on the deal, grand for finding it.
Doug Sheldon.
Yeah. If you know these high-end flippers, and you're willing to put the groundwork in and identifying a good flip, but we didn't have the skill set that they did early on.
Right.
You could just pass it off. I kind of call it trading the paper, trading the rights of the transaction.
Darren's great.
He's amazing.
He's really built such an incredible business.
He's amazing, and if you get with the right people, they won't fight you on how much you want to get paid on it. And then the reason, again, being that you go into flipping eventually is like you'll make 5, 10 grand on the front end, and Darren, being so talented, will end up making 150 grand. And now he had to bust his butt for 6 months and take all the risks. So, more power to him. But you're like, all right, I want to make sure that I'm capable of everything, and I'm using every asset for the best exit strategy. So
right, because on the end side, like once you're set and done, and you've come in, you've done the renovations, and you've done them right. Listing it and getting that has got to be the reward. Clearly for him, it's working. He's incredible. But so you started out like low, and then now you're renovating completely?
Yeah, we've done tons of that, and it's funny I talk about Darren because, like, I always tell people there's 2 kinds of people, like a renovator, which is what I consider myself, and then there's like restorers, right? Yeah. Like they'll take everything back to like it looks like it's
strip it down to the studs.
It's like 1910 with the history, but it's brand new stuff. They have this ability to make everything look new and shiny, but old and classy at the same time. It was never.
It takes a lot of vision.
It does, and it takes a lot of time, and it's more risk, and it's more money.
I'd rather gut it.
Yeah, for me, it was like I need 30, 40 grand instead of 150 in 6 months. I want to make it livable, rent it out, sell it, or just get it where a landlord maybe wants to buy it, relist it on MLS. So I don't think I was ever like so. I didn't even know this existed. There's the Best of Ohio flips and all that kind of stuff. Darren wins it almost every year.
I didn't know that existed.
But he's great at working with our homeowners who already own their own homes, right? High-end homeowners, and completely renovating, what they've already created. Like Lake Avenue, I think I just talked to him the other day, and he's doing a big one on that street. And so I think it's just a completely different niche. He just has that. Like, I would, again, rather just get me in, gut it, and do everything. The time that it has to take him to be able to restore all of that, which is wonderful because we need that in Cleveland, right? There's so much history and these older homes that are beautiful that you've got people coming in and just completely destroying them.
Yeah, that's very true. The funny part is he's actually in my old office.
No, yeah, he is. I think is it the actual office? I think he's in the same spot.
Yeah, no, it's like the actual, you remember the first, so I started in my office as a one-man show. Kelly Martin, just my landlord over in Rocky River, really good guy, really clean building, bunch of attorneys in there, some investment places, whatever. I started in there when I was just a one-man shop or whatever. It was me, like, hustling, smiling, and dialing. I didn't really do a lot of dialing, but I went out and networked, blah, blah, blah. And then I think the first like true we did like a rehab of the actual, you know, stripped it down, gutted it, took all the flooring out, threw up paint, all that good stuff, and like I made it my own, which, you know, the colors were like actually super bright. I remember like I was like, yeah, I want like a variation of red in here, blah blah blah, and I had to like rein it in because like when the paint went up, I was like, God, this looks absolutely awful. Which is probably why, like, when I did flips, I was not really the greatest at flips, and I stay away from.
Me.
Yeah, well, this was pre-Jenny, so. He moved into that office, or what? I'm sure he completely rehabbed and gutted it as well, but.
I would assume so, and that kind of, you know, you asked about the journey a little bit, so we would help people find their flip, and then I'm like, man, they're making a lot of money. And wholesale's great, quick money, and you don't have any risk, but then you're like, well, I got to try this flipping stuff. So we flipped and did well in that. But again, we knew right off the rip, it takes about half a house to realize, like, you're not Mancuso. So
yeah,
how do we do something that's like, you know, we need both people to renovate a city. You need people going high end and middle end, and you need people to make assets for landlords that want to buy them and rent them out. You know, anytime you're taking a house that's on a condemned list or anything like that and making it nice, and someone, a first-time home buyer that only has $150,000, or a millionaire or a landlord, anytime someone's willing to buy that and it was going to get knocked down in 9 months, I think they're doing something that's helping the city. So I think you need a little bit of everything. So
yeah,
we saw that, and we just kind of found our spot. Did well in that, and then we bought some big apartments because that's actually, in my opinion, easier. You don't have to renovate and put a $5,000, you know, stove or knock down a wall to get top dollar. You're just making it. You see some of these landlords that are out of state and they're not taking care of the properties very well. And like, if you just go in there, clean them up, make sure there's no bugs or issues of mold, and then new carpet, new paint, like people are happy to have you.
So you started in the value add space.
Yeah,
we just talked about this too, the like out-of-state flippers coming in, and I mean, it's a big problem.
Oh man, I got stories about that.
Yeah.
They're the best sellers. You know, they're like, hey, I got this house, it's completely done. My cousin's like renovating it for me. You unlock the door, you call them in Cali, you're like, you probably want to call your cousin.
Right.
Like,
yeah. So I just had a story. I'm working with an investor, and the contractor, and luckily I got in early because the contractor was like painting the walls blue, and I'm like,
that was me.
Yeah, and like, I mean, and it's just like keeping up with trends is very important, and so I do that, and so we went in, and I'm like, all right, we have to change all of these things. We have to paint all the woodwork. It was like this, like not great brown color, right? Like the older brown wood, and then we have to do these things, and the contractor's like, I just did a house in Cleveland, and he goes, the contractor was going in and taking pictures of part of the wall and part of the floor and saying he was
doing it. And I've seen that happen before.
I'm like, well, and the guys from California, they had no idea.
Scary.
They come in thinking the house is completely done and ready to go, and the guy's like, nothing has been done. And the contractor just pocketed $15,000.
I've heard more than that.
All the dude did was paint a like a 10 by 10 spot on the wall.
I've seen that done by locals up to like a million, not the local company. We're talking about local investors up to $1 million before they kind of obviously either have to leave town or go to jail.
Yeah.
And the way they do that is like they'll borrow a bunch of money from people that lend money for investors. And this is the problem with our industry. Wholesaling is completely legal, and if you do it right, you're adding value to the community. But so many people do it wrong.
Yeah.
And it gets bashed. And then a lot of people do the renovations wrong as far as contractors or even investors on our side. And they give everyone else a bad rep. So, you know, we had people borrowing money from guys there's a lender on the east side that does a ton of volume. And this guy would take his first 15 grand and he would send him pictures of the mudded walls. So the walls were all ready to go and get painted or were painted. And he would say, so that was Project A. And he would need Project B's money. He'd send that in as Project B because, like, unless you walk the property, most Cleveland houses are, 3 1s, 3 1.5s, and they all kind of look the same. If it's white walled, mudded drywall, it's kind of hard to catch. So they were just taking draw money, and then they just had to give like portfolios back.
Yeah, like I said, I learned the hard way, like paying general contractors, and this is not a knock on them. Obviously, they make our business easier, but I remember paying like general contractors like in full for projects, and that was like the worst thing imaginable to do. Like you definitely want to pay people out on draws. If they can't afford to have the raw materials on credit, you probably don't want to deal with. Like, there's a lot of different things that, we can teach. I think folks just tuned in, like, about that flipping business, because everybody sees the HGTV or, you know, they see it online and think it's like super easy. But to your point, I can't tell you, I've heard so many horror stories of like tens of thousands of dollars being stolen, essentially.
I'm going in and staging some of these houses, and the things I have to, like, you know, they're like, can you cover this up? I'm like, I mean, it's just bad because, again, I mean, they're not watching the projects. They're coming in. These contractors are doing botched jobs, and then, you know, that's what you're working with. So it is kind of unfortunate that that's happening.
Like Rick said, there's some crazy good GCs out there too. And that's kind of where Mancuso's taking his business now, because I think he thinks the market's high, and that's kind of less risky than running his complete own operation. So he's a smart guy. He figured that out.
Yep. You're right. There are some great ones. Absolutely. Yep. I think I pissed some people off the other day when I posted that gray's trending out and contractors aren't designers, but it was okay. Controversies can be good sometimes.
Well, Jenny, I can tell you, me and Steve have pissed off probably 90% of the world at one point with our posts. So
I don't normally piss people off, so it was a little, you know, for me, but I'm like, you're not. I mean, it's, you know, but they think they are sometimes. And I said, okay.
I had to get my sister adjusted to that, too. She thought when she got into mortgages, she was going to save the world and, like, be an extreme empath and, like, love the world. I said, you don't understand this business. Like, it is the Wild West. Like, as soon as you give somebody an inch, they will go 10 million miles.
Yeah, so I made a post and I just said, like, hey, contractors aren't designers, right? Like, they're just not. And then I had all these contractors commenting on my post saying, what are you talking about? I would like to think that I am a designer. And I'm like, well, if you're still painting your walls dark gray, you're not.
Well, I think it comes down to, like, if you're doing a bunch of stuff, you're probably not doing one thing super well. And I mean, I've had to teach myself that. It's not a knock on the contractor that thought he was a designer, or the designer that thought he was a flipper.
Right.
I just know when I was spread thin, going through, you guys asked the journey, I was doing a lot of overlapping there. And every time we had their best quarter, it was because we were just crazy dialed in on one thing. So I think no matter what, you're in real estate, radio, whatever it is, if you focus on one thing, one niche, like, you're going to see better results. So
that's so true.
I would just tell people, if they're listening, they don't care about real estate and they're a salesman, or they're in who cares what, you know, farming. You know, if you can dominate one sector, it's a lot better than trying to be good at all of them.
Yep.
And also, you know, really good general contractors, please come to Investor Source. Please come to Women Who Invest. Please come to any event that Equity CMG is attached to, or Investor Source, because everybody's looking for a good GC that's going to do straight up business, that's not going to, like, rob people, blah, blah, blah. And we will absolutely co-sign you. Like, I have no problem co-signing, like, the good guys in the industry. And that's why we really try to, you know, we really vet the people that, even when it down to sponsors, like, if our sponsors aren't, you know, meeting the level of expectations we expect, then obviously we move to the next. But
and we use you know, like, personally, we're using you. And I mean, I've been blessed enough to find a good team of good general contractors that we're using right now. But I mean, it's been hard. I think it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people. But
it's very hard, and their material costs are through the roof as well.
Yeah, their job's not easy either.
No.
And that's why I don't like to, you know, put out all of them in one basket. I have buddies that do it unbelievably, and usually the ones that are unbelievable, it's like, I can't afford them. You know? So it's like, you have to find a mix. So, and then one thing I do want to touch base on before we change the subject is, I think for me, I want to, like, educate on, I've told the path, but if I can educate on any piece, is that first duplex, because I was broke with bad credit coming out of grad school. I just bought it.
I actually remember that.
Yeah,
me and I talking about it in the Ram truck.
Yep, bought it and lived in half. That's a game changer. So if you're listening and you're like, how do I get started? That's it. You buy a duplex or a fourplex, and you live in a unit, you rent out the other 3 units, and life can become much easier.
Which you can purchase with FHA with 3.5% down.
Yep, I mean, it's doable.
Trying to tell my 20-year-old that right now.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I would do if I was listening. And then Rick brought up a good point. If you're trying to flip, or even, you know, if your mom and dad are doing a renovation and you're listening, this is the other thing that we've touched on. The one big takeaway I would say is, Rick said, you know, don't pay up front. If you're going to have even
do not do that.
If someone's doing your kitchen, or you're doing your own kitchen and a flip, you want that contractor, whoever, you know, is even if you're the contractor and you're subbing it out, pay for that 33%. You know, make sure it's about 33% done. Give them another 33%. You do it in the thirds. That protects you. And
thirds, thirds or quarters, depending on.
You get a bid that says, you know, no change orders without a sign off, and no, you know, basically they can't just come to you and add on a bunch of fees at the back end.
What's a change order, just so they know?
Yeah, so anytime. When I renovated my house, I had a house in Avon, and it was an old farmhouse. My bid was like fantastic, and I did end up living there. It was a beautiful house, and I made a bunch of money on it.
House.
But it was an 1874 farmhouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is the oldest house I've ever owned.
But
and
it was gorgeous,
for sure
though.
Haunted, too, by the way.
What?
Yeah, 100%.
I can't wait to hear this story.
It was impressive.
It was a cool house. I mean, it had a hidden wine room, and
Wine room,
that's why we had to get rid of it.
big safe.
Yeah, we had to get rid of it because the baby, I was told it was a bachelor pad, which was fine because I was a bachelor. So, like, mission.
Got a little rowdy there.
Yeah, definitely.
We go to $2 over there in
$2.
Avon, and we would go for a run.
But a change order is when you open a wall in an 1874 house and you find the roof line of the original house behind the plaster, right? And the contractor's going, I had no clue this is going to cost an extra $15.
Yeah.
Or they did the electrical in that house, and I got great bids. But the basement, since there was like 3 additions from a very, very small farmhouse all the way up to what ended up being like 3,300 square feet.
Wow.
So like there were like 5 sections of houses, and I just built the last section. And the kitchen, which I think was the 4th section, they thought that it was, and this is kind of our fault, this should be an obvious thing, they thought it was over the basement, and it wasn't. So the electrician had to like cut a hole in the floor and then work like he was in a coffin on his back instead of like feeding it up normally. So
in a haunted house at that.
so his price, just knowing that, like the work was the same, and he's just
Good electricians are well worth
Yep.
the investment.
And
My uncle was an electrician.
all he said is like, I don't want to crawl around with mice and snakes for 4 days and get paid whatever it was, $6,000. I want 15. I was like, I don't blame you. But if you have, you know,
Understandable.
a good contract can stop that. So you just want to, you know, like I said, if we're going to move on topics, I think those are my 2 big gives if people are trying to get started, or even just like I said, trying to do their own bathroom at their house. It's probably a good takeaway.
So you got into the Wild West of the multifamily, and I know at one point you're probably a couple thousand units from what I recall, or something in that capacity. And then you kind of sold out of all of it, which is kind of like a pivot and shift. No different than when we switched out of resident. You know, I mean, if you're a lender and you're sticking in the residential market right now, you're probably bankrupt or you're going to be bankrupt. So that's the honest to God truth. I mean, you know, me and Steve had a brutally honest conversation. I was like, you know, I don't know where CNBC, I don't know where our government gets the information, but I mean, as real estate being a lead indicator, of, you know, where the market's going to go. Like I think there's like 35% of mortgage companies went away. At the beginning of the year, there was 170,000 loan officers, and now there's like 99,000. Like where they're not saying the R word, AKA recession, I'm not seeing it because like, I mean, we got destroyed in real estate, but take us through how you built up that portfolio, and then like what made you like just flip that switch and say, all right, I got to get out of this. I thought it was
I mean,
genius.
I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we talked about being good at one thing and not good at another, and that screams multifamily. So I like to think I'm a good marketer and a good deal finder. So I would find very cheap apartment buildings or large condo complexes and stuff like that. And I knew that if I took one was 70 units in Ravenna, Ohio, 48 units up in Sheffield Lake, and I knew my skill set with my crews, if I did that by myself, we would really have messed it up. So we brought on some really good friends and good partners, and we just sectored it off. So let's say you're going to make like 30 grand on a flip, a single family flip, and you're not good at the renovation, so you bring in someone and they do that half, and you're your partner. People do that all the time, but you have to do volume, because you're going to make 15 and 15. On the higher level stuff, on the big buildings, it takes it. I mean, some of them took 3 years, but the payouts were much larger than 30 grand. So when you bring in like puzzle pieces because you know you're bad at something, and that took me so long to figure out.
I agree.
Just saying, I suck at this. So who can I bring in to fix it?
We're going through that with the development team we're putting together.
So what I would do is I would do a lot of email and direct mailers, and we'd find something very, very cheap. Partners would know it was a good deal, and I'd have it under contract, and then I would just negotiate before we even closed on it. Like, this is how much I'm going to get paid for finding it, and this is how much equity in the deal I'm going to keep. And before everyone, you said multiple thousands. I had 1,000 units, but I was only 37.5% owner.
That was another thing I wanted you to share, because a lot of times you see people that are like, I'm in 20, 25,000, 30,000 different units, but what they're not saying is they have a small percentage in each. But that small percentage adds up, obviously.
Yeah. So we call people, I would think, most of the time, people under 5% that are either just raising the money and or finding the deal and stepping all the way away. A lot of times they'll get labeled syndicators, like basically syndicating the deal or the money, and then they're, on to the next one.
Right.
They're looking for a residual. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes I think they do mislead the public on, like, I got 20,000 units. In reality, what's 5% of 20,000? Now, mine was 1,000 at 37.5%. So I had 375 units in my brain.
Right.
But
and that's 37% is a larger percentage in comparison to, especially when you talk about multifamily. I mean, it's just a different beast. Like, and everybody's not used to that. Like, we're working obviously with some musical artists or whatever, and like we're trying to like acclimate them to the real estate world. And it's like, if you're getting 30%, you're bringing a lot to the table.
Yeah, the way I describe that is like we call it a la carte real estate. So if I brought the deal, I'd usually want anywhere from 5 to 15%.
Yeah.
You can go up to 19% without going on a bank note and getting underwritten. And Rick can probably talk on that. So I would always try to stay underneath that, especially early in my career when I didn't have a ton of credit or a ton of cash to bring.
It mitigates your risk.
Why? Yeah, you're not, if anything does go wrong, which knock on wood, it really never did for us, but you're not the one, BK or bankrupting, and you're not the one in court getting sued. So I thought that was a cool little avenue.
Which you're going to see a lot of happening in the multifamily space, because there's a lot of notes ballooning that are, coming up too, and there's people that, did not hedge against rates obviously going up, but neither here nor there. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so a la carte, I would always, again, there's probably not, I don't know, but maybe there are some people listening that do big multifamily, but they probably know this. You don't get paid for like 2 or 3 years. So if you're finding the deal, it might be a smoking deal, but it's not like you finish the renovation, list it, someone buys it and closes in 30 days. You got to do renovation on 48 units, move tenants around.
It takes a period of time.
It's a war. You know, it's not a battle. So we found out we had to take something for our upfront marketing costs that brought the deal and pay ourselves back and pay our employees, keep the lights on. And then we would take equity, and some of them we would manage the renovation, some of them we would step away. And that 37.5% was the average. We were as little as 10%, as high as 51. Never more than that.
Wow. My mind's blown.
This dude, I'm telling you, like that 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I mean, that's like, I just fell into this development space, like, and I literally brought Steve in. I said, Steve, like, I know you did this, like, and he like broke it down to me, like I said, and like it takes me like 2 or 3 minutes to understand what Steve's saying. Like, he just breaks it down to make it so easy. But a lot of these development deals are developed, a lot of times even the developer can sometimes take. A lot of developers are not good with money management, but the model he's talking about is you go identify the dirt. You, like I said, you stay in that 5 to 15%, max 19% range. All you're doing is identifying the deal, and you're taking that in perpetuity, so you own that. So, Steve was getting residual checks on these properties where he really just went out and identified the land, and then he put the syndicate together, he put the money together, he put all the pieces together, the builders, blah, 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 and he just held that in perpetuity. But the smart way to do it, and I learned from Steve and his mistakes as well, like, is to take some of the money up front and then in perpetuity.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, since Investor Source, obviously, I've been around a lot of investors, learned a lot about multifamily. I mean, I'm a residential real estate agent. That's been my focus. And I don't know, multifamily scares me, commercial scares me. Yeah. Now, it's getting better, but I will say this, I don't think anybody's ever explained it that well that you just did.
And I think, like, the world is a little scary right now, and that's one of the reasons I dropped my license. Like, I was doing all right. Like, I would sell out of my own flips, and I would do like $3 or $4 million a year in residential real estate, which is not a lot, right?
That was my next question, is why you dropped your license.
Well, I was only selling my own stuff, and they say, I didn't get sued a lot back early in my career. I'm on a hot streak right now, so. But
all these legal disclaimers, that's where they come from.
But early in my career, I was never getting sued. But they said that if you did and you held your license and you were doing the renovations, that they were gonna kind of hold you to a higher standard of maybe what you should have done and/or said. So I said, well, enough of that, because I was saving some money, but I wasn't making money. I was saving money because I was selling my own stuff. But I would only sell like close relatives outside of that. I didn't have enough time to go out and do. I mean, being a good residential real estate agent is hard.
Yeah.
People think
I would agree. It's why
laid back, and it's not. And I just knew it wasn't the space for me. I think that's probably what pushed my career. Is like I was so good at trying something for a year or two and being like, I suck at it. We move on and find a new piece that we're good at.
I was the same way.
Yeah, good for you. I think that being a residential, you have to create a vertical. There's got to be something else that you're doing to push the envelope in.
If everybody, I mean, the mortgage business got absolutely decimated. And Steve will tell you, I mean, we had some huge, I mean, me and him would joke, we'd go have Guinnesses after Guinness after Guinness after Guinness. But, we'd be talking about like all the business and deals we're doing, and then the margins to go down 60, 70% because of something that we don't even control. You know what I'm saying? Like poor government spending, I obviously can't control, left and the right, whatever you want to call it. We just had another bill passed of $350 million going overseas. Like, I just don't understand how people don't
Here we go. This is a segue into...
I just don't understand how people don't understand how inflation works. Like, it drives me insane. Like, they passed an inflation bill that was spending more money that we didn't have.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it impacts the real estate market because you go from 3% rates to 7% rates in 2 months.
I mean, any little thing affects everything that we do. People can afford what they used to be able to afford, and then we're losing buyers and sellers. And
one of the funniest things I saw posted was Steve posted, I don't want to say the name of the franchise, but it was a burrito. It was a burrito place, if you could imagine. And he put it right next to a beer can, and he was like, I remember these things were as big as my head.
Yep.
And I comment underneath, I was like, I went to one of my favorite grocery stores. I bought 8 items, you know what I'm saying? Like, one was being a donut, or actually, I think 2 were a donut. Mm-hmm. It was $32.
Yep. I'll say the name of the burrito place. I don't care. It's obviously Chipotle. I remember being in college and having no money. You go up there and you're like, let me get a little more rice.
Like $6.
Double wrap it. The burrito is like the size of a small child, and I could eat for 2 days. Mm-hmm. And the other one I just got looked like a taco. It was
hilarious.
Round.
It was hilarious.
I mean, it's free advertising. They're going to get mad.
Hey, listen, I don't, it don't bother me none.
I mean, we got a picture of the burrito. You can't sue me for it. That's an accurate description.
He knows all about lawsuits, so he knows what he can say.
You're not going to be in real estate and not get into a lawsuit. I've been through about a dozen myself.
Okay, well, I have not yet. So.
Oh, don't you worry.
Like I said, I was doing so good, and then I went on fire with lawsuits the last 3 years. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is when people are struggling. So people struggle is when they
start suing people.
Yeah, or the drama kicks up in the industry, which you've seen a lot of too.
And to make things clear, I think we won 90% of the last ones in the career.
I won about 75%.
So I'm not doing.
I know to call you guys. God forbid something happened to me.
I'm not out here doing sketchy stuff, but Rick makes a good point. When everything's going really well in any industry, no one's trying to like rug pull or snatch some money from whoever, because it's so easy to make it in a good way. And real estate was like that from 2015 to 2021.
2021. I mean, arguably even before then. I mean, but the rates were artificially low. But
it was. Well, and I say 2015 because like that's when I felt
started.
But 2009 to 2021 was an immaculate time, and I don't think a lot of people had to go out there and try to take profit from other people.
Right.
There was so much.
It was like the Roaring 20s.
There was so much profit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I wish I would have started early.
Yep.
Honestly, though, they're predicting the next 7 to 10 years the same exact thing's going to happen, because people don't understand. Like, once inflation stops, and or like, you got the 3 main factors, obviously, is like I said, government spending, supply chain issues, and then wage inflation. You know what I'm saying? Those 3 things, once they come under control, you start seeing that 10-year bond just, so you'll start seeing rates. They're predicting arguably, they predicted initially the end of this year they were going to be enforced. I said they are out of their mind. They're smoking crack. I'm sorry.
Is that ever going to happen again?
No, you'll never see 2% rates, but you'll see rates in the 4s for sure in the next 24 months. You get absolutely guaranteed, because once inflation is under control, the rates start going back down. The reason why they're going up so fast is because we have an inept Federal Reserve that thought they could fix inflation overnight.
We are not a controversial podcast.
Yeah, no, not even close.
No,
I'm sorry. Like, I could talk about politics and how out of touch they are with, but whatever. So, got into the multifamily, broke everything down, which is absolutely genius of you because, like I said, anytime I need something and like I'm around a bunch of people and they're talking really fast, I literally had Steve come to sit down with me with a guy and he was talking super fast, and I was like, Steve, what'd you think? And then he like broke it down to me. I was like, okay, like he's my good litmus test typically is going to be like a Steve or Isaac or a Noop or guys like that where I can be like, does this make sense? Like,
Right.
does this sound sketchy? Because a lot of times, like,
Well, it can be very confusing. Like for me, like starting out, my first investor source meeting is you're throwing your acronyms down. I'm
oh
like,
yeah, that was fun.
what are you guys talking? I just left my
Jenny.
government job. I like literally just left it. Really jumped into real estate full time, and I'm sitting in a room with all of these investors and Rick, and I'm like, shoot, what did I get myself into? And then now jump ahead like 7 months later, and I'm like, oh my God, I get it. But it's been a lot of sitting in the rooms with the right people, listening to what they're saying, paying attention.
And learning from the mistakes.
100%. But him, the way he just like said it, made complete sense to me.
Yeah, and I would, another, I'm trying to isolate points if you're listening that you could really take home. I think people do sit on the sidelines too long, and they might feel that way right now just because the market's high and interest rates are high, and they might have said, I missed the boat. But, it's not a bad thing to go to that meeting and get confused. And then eventually, one of my best friends, he got in a little after me, and I was in that wholesaling spot, and I had a really good house in Lakewood, and I sold it to him, and this is like, he's like a brother to me, and has been for 20 years. So I sold him the house that I was going to renovate, and he ended up doing it, and it was their first one, so they probably messed it up slightly more than I would have, because I, was pretty deep in my career at that point. But I ended up making, I think, 15 or 20 on the fee, and then they renovated the whole thing, and I think they made like 21 or 19, like $1,000 more than me.
Yeah.
And I remember his wife saying, like, what the heck? That guy did nothing and almost made as much as us. But what all it is I tell everyone, when you're doing your first one and you are a little scared and a little confused, I think the goal is break even.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The amount that you'll learn on that first one, and you're not going to feel scared to take the next good deal that comes across the desk, is that kid, he's done hundreds of houses and big in the Airbnb space since then, and he's made, well more than what he paid me on that first one. So sometimes you got to cut your teeth and learn the industry one way or another, and there's no better way than doing it.
Yep. Yeah, love that.
What do you, on a flip, on average, what do you think, like, the top guy, this is another thing, because I think a lot of people, like I said, they watch flipping in Vegas, blah, 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 and they think you're going to make like 100 racks or 150 racks per, what do you think the top guys in Northeast Ohio are netting out net after everything? Yeah,
so our rule, if we're taking something down, and we don't always hit our rule, but for us to buy it on paper, we wanted to underwrite at 65, 70% all in. And what that means is, like, we have to buy, if we're looking at a $100,000 house in West Cleveland, we got to buy it for $100,000, fix it up for 30, and then sell it for 200-ish, right? And take the fees out and the holding costs, and you want to be around that 70% of all-in cost, holding costs, renovations, and then sell it for the 200, where you have that 30, 35% markup. So I'm not sure what the average flipper, if I had to guess, 35, 40, if they're doing well and have a good product per house. But to me, that margin is probably more what you should shoot for. We do a lot in Cape Coral and Fort Myers, and our average,
you're saying percentages is what people should shoot over with.
Yeah, because we buy in Cape Coral for $425,000. I don't want to buy that, renovate, and make $30,000.
Right.
Because that's a lot of risk and a lot of headache for something that's not worth it. So.
Right.
Yeah, the general numbers I hear in Northeast Ohio are, you're a really good, flipper if you're between, I would say, 25 to 40,000.
Yes, for sure.
And then, the other thing is, obviously, do you have partners, blah, 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 like, how does that net break down? But, to Steve's point, like, the holding costs, that's where you can get buried over holding costs if you don't pay attention to those. Your taxes, your insurance, if you're taking out any hard money notes, you got to factor that in. So, and that's one thing, at Investor Source, we really try to do the best job of, like, breaking down, like, into layman's terms, like, this is what you need to be aware of, blah, 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 and, don't watch out for the hidden fees. But so going out of commercial, I remember you explaining the call when you saw everything. Like, what made you just do that? Like,
I got a really good mentor. So like we broke this down a little bit ago, 2009, 2010 is where that last recession stopped, and it just went bonkers for like...
Bonkers.
What is that, almost 20 years? 10 years, 15 years-ish, 10, 15 years. So I have only saw an upcycle.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get caught in the blender when it starts to, you don't want to catch a falling knife. And if you've only seen up, you can get a little drunk on your own stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I felt like I was a superstar.
And you were. But, I mean... we always say you don't know who's skinny dip until the tide goes out, right?
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to be the naked guy until the tide goes all the way out. And I didn't want to be...
I've never heard that before. I like it.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a naked guy, so I decided, like, I'm a gambler, right? Rick will tell you this, probably too much so, at the casino and whatnot. And I've been my whole...
We're a little crazy.
Okay, I have never...
My whole life,
Not a gambler.
started playing poker at like 15, and they give you those plastic chips. And again, you get drunk on your own stuff. You got so many of them in front of you, and it's just plastic until you take it off.
Yeah.
And what's
it's
that
just
called?
plastic.
And what that's called in a casino is a chip, and what it's called in real estate is a PFS, personal financial statement. The bank will go, you're worth this much, and you're like, I'm the man. And it's a poker chip until you sell it and take the money back. So
yeah, and that's where I say,
These analogies. Wow, that was good.
You got to break it down.
Yeah.
I mean, you can run a multi-million-dollar company for the better part of a decade, and then in 2 or 3 months, you can just watch that go completely down the toilet.
Well, I believe, so I don't know. So I got a good mentor. His name's Lee. He's down in Tampa, Florida.
Good Irish guy.
Yeah.
My boy.
Yeah, and a smart guy. But he, I don't think he'd care if I said this. He almost went bankrupt in one of the markets, and he's a big believer. He's a grinder. He just like, I'm not going to borrow my way out, which you see people try and lean this and do that. He's like, I'm going to sell my way out.
Yeah, that's actually smart.
So instead of waiting and having to do the wholesales to sell our way out, I was like, let's just take a lot of chips off the table. And I was wrong. I was wrong by like 2 years. That was right around the Trump election when he lost. And I just thought, with everything kind of starting to shake, I believe in my ability in 5 years to go buy it all back. So why would I be scared to give it up?
Yeah, you're not a real hustler unless you can lose it all and go get it, like Notorious B.I.G. says.
And I just, I like nice stuff, dude. I mean, it's nice to have a nice portfolio, but like, I like the golf, like I want some money in the bank. So
same way.
Me too.
I think that's another thing that me and Steve really, because we're both like real like cowboy, like gunslinger, like
conservatives.
Just yeah. You just
I didn't gather.
Yeah, well, I mean politically, whatever, but we're like really like you just, especially if you like work your way up out of nothing, like what I'm saying, like we both did, and like I said, there's other people from inner city Cleveland that I don't want to say that I've been in those shoes, but yeah, we've been we were on food stamps, all that stuff when we were younger. Yeah. Like when you start getting like your first taste of like real legit money and you're starting to see those checks come in, you can really start thinking that you're invincible, you know what I'm saying? But the flip side to Steve's point is we just always are in our own head, like, how do I get to like I'm thinking like how do I now create $1 billion mortgage company? I've already been in the millions for X amount of years. Like, how do I create this $1 billion mortgage company? Like, when you're a cowboy or a cowgirl, respectfully, it's all chips. It's all chips on the table. And everything is like, I think Warren Buffett said it, like, he's like, it's all like, I count the wins. Like, that's what I look for. You know what I'm saying?
I think no one should be scared to sell at 80-90% of the top. Because 90% of the top, and I know a lot of people are probably listening on radio. If you can see the screen, like you're on a bell curve. You sell at this 80-90 when it's going up, it's so different than selling at this 80-90. So like, let's say, and this is why Mancuso went from doing a lot of his own flips to doing other people's projects, is that he would have to hold a lot of inventory and buy houses for $200,000-$300,000. He'd have 40 in his pipeline. And if he catches that 10% slide, he's in big trouble.
Money, yeah.
Because he's got 30 houses to finish as it's already sliding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's putting money in the market, and it's still sliding the whole time. He's doing a 3-4 month rehab. He's a smart guy. He didn't let that happen. Yeah. But that's because Mancuso's been, I think, through 3 market cycles. So he's, he didn't just wake up smart.
Right.
He had to pay the dues
lived through it.
And learn.
Yeah, I mean, if he was in the 90s, how long has he been in business?
A long time.
Yeah.
He's been in a lot of different businesses, but I want to say 25 plus years, I would think.
Yeah, so I mean, probably 2008, 2009 was definitely a squeeze. There was another one in 2013 where a lot of companies went belly up. There was I think another short squeeze around the initial pre-Trump election, and then there was this one, which I liken this one because it was so abrupt to 2008, but it's exact opposite, because 2008 there was like arms readjusting, blah blah blah. You'll never see that again, but you will see a flat market for sure, and we're already seeing it because, people are listing their houses like way over, ask, and that is going out of the window right now, and we're getting appraisals coming back that are 20, 30,000 less. So that's normally an indication that, the market, to Steve's point, I mean, that 10% on, 30 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, especially if you have like, holding costs or like, you're financing that, like it's a whew.
That's stressful.
I
think everyone's here to make money. Everyone's got a job or owns a business to make money. I don't care if you're salary or W-2, but it's about what you keep. And you got to put it in your bank, and you got to, do the right things and pay the taxes on it and figure out how to keep the most. But if you never take anything off the table, I mean, then you are gambling. And although that's fun after hours, I don't think you should be doing it with your portfolio. So you got to just constantly think, am I okay with this? And I'm not going to sit there and beat myself up like I should have held on to Tesla or Bitcoin, because, I mean, if you made money, you made money, and time is your friend. There's going to be another Tesla, and there's going to be another market shift. You just believe in your ability to spot it. And you'll probably make more the second time because you actually know about the stuff, and the cycle is a lot better the second time.
Yeah, it's learning your entrepreneurial gut. So then you created Bulletproof, obviously, which was what was on the flyer, Bulletproof Cartel. What made you create that? Was it just...
Yeah, it's a good story, actually. Mark Jenkins, who's an investor in Cleveland, I was at an Indians game. I'm like a huge sports fan. So I go to a lot of games, and I would do stuff like this online all the time, and I would do it for free a lot and put it out on my own pages. And I never really thought about charging people for consulting or anything like that. And he came up to me at an Indians game. Oh, well, I guess, yeah, it was an Indians game, and now it's a Guardians game. But he was like...
It's the Indians.
I know. I was going to say.
Well, I could say it because it's like...
This is Lorraine County.
Always going to be the Indians.
So so he comes up to me, and he's like, dude, I follow your stuff. And he's like, I really appreciate you making those live videos when you just walk through your flip and you show what worked and what didn't. I have 4 houses right now, and I want more. I said, wow, congratulations. And I thought that was kind of be the end of it. I was like, let's grab a beer, we'll chat, and go on our ways. And then he's like, yeah, my house is right by your office and this and that. And I was like, cool. And the next day he shows up to my office, and he's like, dude, I want you to coach me. And I'm like, that'd be great if I was a coach, but I'm not. So beat it. I gotta get back to work. And he showed up like 5 days in a row. And I was like, all right, it's either coach this kid or get a restraining order. So we opened a coaching company, and it went up to like 174 people at the height of it.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I probably owe him a steak dinner or something.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah.
He was persistent. I mean, that's good. How's he doing now?
He's doing well. His portfolio, he partnered with someone, and partnerships are tough, and we won't get into that, but he grew the...
We'll not get into that.
Yeah, he grew the portfolio very aggressively and successfully. And that's another thing, since we're on that topic, and we won't air out any of what happened with those two, and I've had really good partners, again, knock on wood. The least friendly it ended up with was like you disagreed with like the final numbers on the HUD, and you thought you would do a couple more bucks. And then
I actually remember that actually happened to you live, how mad you were when it happened.
But that was as gruesome as it got with my partners. I've been blessed to have some really good ones. None of those lawsuits for me came from partners, which I think is huge, man. This is a marriage, and I think people don't understand that when they sign these LLC agreements and stuff like that. They think it's going to be
walk in the park.
Yeah, and it eventually will not be, and it's just, did you pick the right people, and do you have the right understanding? The operating agreement should really, and for LLCs and apartment buildings, you should have a clear layout of what people expect you to do, because people only get mad when they get surprised. So if you have a clear breakdown of stuff on day-to-day activities, you should and you trust your partner, you should be good. So he did great, you know, and he's scaled it up, and he's going to pivot, I'm sure, like everyone else. But it was a good decision, I think, for him and me, and that opened a world for me that I'd like to continue to be in. Consulting space. We have some plans to go into a different industry that's got a couple more dollars than real estate, and it's worldwide instead of like, you know, Northeast Ohio. So we're gonna, you know, Bulletproof's my baby, but we're gonna try to recreate it in a sector that probably has less of a ceiling. So
yeah, we're doing, so we have some talks with some Canadian banks, and we're speaking to some people in Jamaica, and there's some people overseas. Like we're trying to actually truthfully be the first international mortgage company, and we're willing to, you know, partner with bank. The only scary part is internationally, the governments is what you have to be cautious of, because, you know, there's a lot of laws here to protect us in the United States, but elsewhere it's not necessarily like that. Depends on the country that you're in.
Yep.
But Browns talk here.
I was gonna say, we basically.
Are we running out of time?
Well,
oh wow.
Browns talk.
And I'm out of career, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
That was the last chapter. I mean, we continued to do everything we talked about, and when I always tell people, and then we'll go to Browns because that's what I came here to talk about. But
wait, Browns are your career?
Yeah, no, it feels like it.
Listen,
I mean,
if you grew up like I 1980s cardiac kid, like. I've just adjusted to the mania that we call Browns fandom, but it is like Josh Cribbs, who played for the Browns, like, you know, he started in 2005. Like, I was actually watching the game with Josh Cribbs and Greg Williams, who used to be the head coach, blah blah blah, and a couple other Browns players, and actually, ironically, Boobie Gibson was there. But I was watching the game with them, like, and I had missed the Chubb thing. Like, I had a volleyball game at Panini's. I sponsor a bunch of teams. It's like my competitive, like I can't play basketball anymore. My knees are shot. So volleyball's my thing. So had a volleyball game. I heard in the background when the touchdown happened with Pittsburgh on the punt return. I was livid. I was like, okay, I got to tune this out or we're going to lose. Because, like, I'm going to just, like, I'm going to go crazy.
6 seconds, and first snap from scrimmage, interception, and
I couldn't believe it.
The play-by-play announcers made some good points, and I'm not unsure, and I think most people should be unsure on Watson yet, but he had that play. You're a football guy. You know you get that first play for, like, a week.
Yeah.
So, like, to blow that, and it did hit our tight end's hands, and, you know, there's a lot that could have won us that game, but it's just like when you have preparation for a week and you're giving up 7 points, our offense has given up more touchdowns than our defense.
I know
so that's cool.
Statistic is staggering. And then the other thing is, I mean, just as a former player myself, I play ball both sides of the ball, like defense, offense. We have probably 8,000 pounds of linemen, and like to watch that pocket collapse that quickly, like towards the end, like that's the part where you can't completely blame the quarterback. Like you have to hold the offensive line, no matter how tired, no matter how good. Dude, that one kid's 400 pounds, and he played basketball. You know what I'm saying? And he's 6'8".
Yeah.
And you're just watching T.J. Watt just manhandle this dude. And you're like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And again, I think that it's easy for people to go to like coaching sometimes. Like I do think that a lot of people, like especially Browns fans, they go right to coaching, and I don't always think that that's fair, but I also do like the play calling to me is just at least a little bit questionable.
Well, I just think that like there's probably too much criticism as a Browns fan from me and everyone.
Yeah,
I mean,
too many armchair quarterbacks.
Cincinnati.
Are we just used to losing? Because I feel like that's really weird.
We've just had a dysfunctional organization.
I mean, and it's just a consistent thing. And I remember talking to someone the other day, and he was like, "Oh, we're going to the playoffs. We're going to the playoffs." I'm like, "We say this every single year," and he's like, "No, it's happening. It's happening." And I'm like, "Until it doesn't."
We thought we were 2-0 before we played the Steelers.
100%.
I said, it doesn't matter what the record is with us and the Steelers. Like that game is always tightly matched. We can be the worst Brown, which we have been.
And then we say, if Chubb didn't like get injured, we would have won that game. Well, duh, you know, like of course we would have won that game, but the point is we didn't.
Very
win
predictable
that
play
game.
calling.
And you're right. Our offense was not didn't help us at all. And that first play. So we had the first play, and then we had Chubb, and then that was it. Yeah. We lost the game at that point where it was over.
Mentally.
We should have just walked off the field and said, everybody save your Monday night. Goodbye.
Except our defense was alive. Myles Garrett was cooking in there.
Yeah, he usually is, but that was ridiculous. Like, really? So we were defeated at that moment, and if you ask me, I wasted my Monday night. I love the Browns. I love watching them play.
I did feel bad because I thought about making the trip up to Pittsburgh and a ton of my buddies, and I was thinking, man, like that hangover is going to hit different tomorrow because you're in a hotel.
I felt like crap on Tuesday morning, and then you wake up and the first thing you think of is Chubb.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you try and roll out of bed and you're not feeling good because you had too many Budweisers, and I'm like, all right, what a waste.
Yeah.
Well, Chubb, we're praying for you. Kareem, please, brother, just step up to the plate. Stefanski, stop having these gentlemen jeopardize their health for you. You have a winning team. Let's do something with it. On that note, I think we're going to check out. Follow us, Instagram, Equity CMG, Jenny at Jenny Gennaro _ and Steve, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so if you're on Facebook, I run the Bulletproof off of Facebook. So on there, I'm Stephen Todd Morris, my full name. And then on Instagram, I'm at
Uncle Stevie.
Uncle Stevie.
Uncle Stevie.
That's Uncle Stevie. So those are the two that I check those quite often. So
awesome. Thank you for coming. This was great. One of my favorite ones today.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Greg Williams for head coach. He's a good guy. I love that guy. He's a maniac. He's nuts like us. All right. Go Browns. Let's get it going. Appreciate everybody tuning in today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
The proceeding was a paid informational program. The views and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of the staff, management, or advertisers of WOBL Radio.